Excellent. So, hi everyone, welcome and good morning. And today's session is on equality, equal opportunity and diversity. And this is the first session we'll be doing on this unit is Learning Outcome 1. And this is for health studies and it's equal opportunity and diversity. And it is a level 3 qualification. And we will start, there's 4 learning outcomes within this unit, and the first one is learning outcome 1, which will start today. My name is Shazia Khan, so if you've got any questions, just ask. So the first learning outcome is to understand different types of prejudice, stereotyping and oppression. Then we've got learning outcome 2, which we'll be looking at tomorrow, which is to explain no explanations of origins of prejudice, stereotyping and oppression. And then we've got to look at learning outcome 3, which is to understand issues relevant to equal opportunity and diversity. And we'll be looking at them in regards to learning outcome 3 next week. And then we'll have another session, which is the 4th session next Sunday, and that will be on the assignment discussion. Is everyone okay with that? Yeah? Okay. So just carrying on, now we're going to carry on with learning outcome 1. So with carrying on with learning outcome 1, the grading for the unit is the following grade descriptors will be applied. So understanding the subject. So what the subject is asking you, understanding the assessment criteria, understanding the application of knowledge, the use of information, communication and presentation, and the quality as well. So these are the grading of this unit and how it will be graded on the basis of doing the assignment. Okay, so this is what the elements are, and when it comes to doing the assignment, we'll go through the assignment discussion with you. Okay, and that would be in regards to gaining a merit and distinction. So you would look at the different grading criteria. Is everyone okay with that? Do you all understand that? Olu, do you understand it? Yeah. So firstly, we'll just start with what equality is, because it's really important to identify the elements of equality before going on to what diversity is or what inclusion is. So when you look at equality, what's the first thing that comes to mind for anyone? What do you think the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about equality? Sandra, what do you think it is? What do you think equality is? What about Esperance? What do you think equality is?
Is treating people equal and fairly, and you can sometimes understanding about the rights. Everyone is the same rights.
Yeah, so treating people equally is really important, and protecting them from being discriminated. So any sort of elements of, trying to protect people from, does that happen though? Do we treat people equally? Or is there forms of discrimination? There are different forms of discrimination, okay? And we're going to go through them in more detail. But equality is treating everyone fairly. It could be a man and a woman. It could be someone of different gender, different religion. Make sure they're treated equally and fairly, okay? So diversity is the next element, okay? And that's really important when we look at what diversity is. Diversity refers to recognizing and respecting and valuing differences in people. So it's the way of embracing differences, including people from all walks of life. What could be a difference that you could embrace? Olu? Olu, can you hear me? What could be diversity? What would you be embracing? Give me an example of something. Anyone? Sandra? Okay, so when we look at diversity, okay, this is looking at embracing different people from different, ensuring that everyone is treated equal as well, but it's embracing everyone's differences and their backgrounds and their different walks of life. So it could be people from different races, it could be people from different genders, sexuality, it could be economic backgrounds, religious beliefs. Promoting and encouraging diversity within any sort of workplace is really important, and it means that it's actively respecting, appreciating, and empowering them people and who they are. And it's really important because it makes people feel safe within the world itself, and respected, you know, and within the workplace, and especially schools. You know, everyone deserves to be treated equally, and no one is different. So diversity is an element that is trying to respect other people's values, their religion. You know, some people may shake hands, some people may not, some people may celebrate, you know, a religious ceremony, some may not. Then we've got the final one, which is inclusion. And we're going to go through these more in detail so you've got a better idea. Inclusion is those, inclusion is where the differences are seen as a benefit, and where perspectives and differences are shared, leading to better decisions. So it's an act or practice accommodating people from historically being included. So while many organizations out there, you know, pride themselves on inclusion efforts, the reality is that the most oppressed people are often the ones within the greatest awareness of how much more work needs to be done in this regard. So, you know, inclusion in the workplace is really important. It needs to, everyone should have the right to equal access to employment, how they're employed, pay, equal training. So they must have equal elements of diversity and equality. So diversity and equality within the healthcare sector. And this is where I expect something from you lot as well, because you work within the healthcare sector. So can you tell me how equality and diversity affects your lives within the healthcare sector? Esperance? Why do you think it's so important within the health and social care sector?
I'm sorry, I've got kids around. Sometimes I won't be able to answer.
Sorry?
I'm sorry, my environment won't allow me sometimes to.
Oh, okay, no, that's okay. That's all right.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. Olu, can you? No? Okay. Sandra? Okay, so equality, I'll go through it so we've got a better idea. Equality and diversity is really important. Olu. Okay. Equality and diversity is really important within the healthcare sector, because it's an integral part of the healthcare sector that everyone is treated according to their needs. So you need to make sure that everyone is given equality of opportunity. For example, you may need to give information formats, example, Braille, to make access to it. Equality also within the health care sector is means that everyone in the care setting is treated equally regardless of their abilities or lifestyle or their beliefs. You know, and on the other hand, diversity means the differences between people should be appreciated, and people's beliefs, cultures and values should be, you know, accepted within the healthcare setting. Promoting any sort of inclusion and diversity in healthcare can be easier for some services than others. However, that doesn't mean that it can't be done. Remembering, if you make sure that you remember, being a diverse and equal provider isn't an option, it's an essential element of it. So, you know, both equality and diversity are essential components of the health and social care. Good equality and diversity practice ensure that the services that are provided to people are accessible and are fair to everyone, including service users and care providers. This helps everyone feel like they are treated equally and they get respect and dignity they deserve. So within the healthcare sector, it's really important, you know, that we take into account people's things like age, appearance, abilities, disabilities, their origin, their culture, you know, to make sure they feel welcome and part of you know, everyone is treated the same. Good diversity ensures that everyone knows that their differences are something to be celebrated, whatever background, ethnicity, or belief they have. Diversity enhances creativity and encourages the search for new, innovative perspectives and information. So it's really important within the health and social care why we have diversity in there and why we have the element of, you know, getting people involved and making them feel equal. So that's equality and diversity within the healthcare setting. Now we're looking at, I don't know who's wrote this on here, inclusion within the health and social care setting. So inclusion in health and social care refers to being an inclusive employer and helping people cared for to be more included in society. It is important to understand someone's differences, that you can include them and treat them equally and fairly. Being an inclusive employer is essential as it helps people feel involved, empowered in the workplace. Inclusion also refers to being inclusive of different people. You are providing care and support for, but also ensuring that people are included in their local communities, are all able to maintain relationships and so on, to avoid any sort of social exclusion or, you know, making them feel isolated. All workers in health and social care must make sure that they work in an inclusive way to ensure that everyone has, again, equal opportunities. This is especially true about people taking part in their own care. Social isolation can lead to loneliness if not included. So if inclusion is not occurred, if it occurs, which, as we all know, can be a long-reaching negative impact on both physical and mental health. Social inclusions is all about relationships, including connections between staff, service users, it could be carers outside. So it's really important to have them included within the element of, you know, getting them involved as well. So inclusion is really important to make sure that everyone has the equal opportunity to take part in what they want to take part in. So next we're looking at the Equality Act 2010. Okay, so has anyone got any questions around what we've just done? If you can't speak due to the environment around you, put the questions in the chat box and then I can refer to them. So now we're going to look at Equality Act 2010. The Equality Act 2010 brought in various anti-discrimination laws into one single act. So any unlawful discrimination, it could be harassment or victimization relating to one of the equality protected characteristics since 2010 is covered. And we'll look at the protected characteristics next, so you've got a better idea of the elements of that. The reason this act was introduced was to promoting dignity in equality and dignity within the social healthcare. And the legislation is there, like we said, to prevent any sort of inequalities and to make sure that human rights and anti-discrimination laws are taken into place and protecting individuals' rights, both in care and the workers, and that everyone is treated fairly. So this act is the main element of equality and diversity and inclusion. So the protected characteristics within the Act. So discrimination can be direct or indirect, which is why care must be taken when, for example, making a change or in reviewing employment policy, practice or criteria used in workplaces. The characteristics are protected by the Equality Act 2010 are age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage or civil partnership in employment only, pregnancy, maternity, race, religion or belief, sex, sexual orientation. So the Act also provides for protection against association, which provides protection for people who are discriminated against because someone close to them falls under the definition of one of the protected characteristics. So these protected characteristics are really important within the health and social care and are used in regards to how individuals are protected under these characteristics. Now we're going to go on to elements of direct discrimination and indirect discrimination. So we've got direct discrimination, and this is when someone with a protected characteristic is treated less favorably than if they didn't have that protected characteristic. So direct discrimination can also apply when someone is treated less favorably because of it. It could be because of someone who has that a protected characteristic, or someone who wrongly thought to have a protected characteristics. Some examples of direct discrimination are, for example, a promotion panel has been aware of the genders of the candidates whilst marking the application. And a discrimination case won at tribunal, they found that this could have led to unconscious discrimination against a candidate because she was female. Other examples could be direct discrimination, direct pregnancy and maternity discrimination, or direct race discrimination, rejecting someone from a job because they are, you know, a black person rather than a white person. And another example of direct discrimination, it could be direct sexual orientation, where a manager may treat you less favorably because you are a homosexual and treat the other person more favorably because they are not homosexual, they are heterosexual. So these kind of elements are direct discrimination. Then we go to indirect discrimination. And this indirect discrimination is a little bit more subtle. It happens when a workplace rule or practice has the outcome of treating group with a particular protected characteristics negatively compared to a group without the characteristics. So this would be unlawful unless the condition of a requirement is objectively justified. Examples of indirect discrimination are indirect disability discrimination. So an employer who applied a workplace practice which disadvantaged a disabled employee and did not implement any sort of reasonable adjustments. Indirect race discrimination. So, for example, it could be a Sikh employee where his employer instituted a dress code that prohibited him wearing a turban. You know, there are cases out there that are going on in regards to this as well. Indirect sex discrimination, you know, where a woman is asked to come back to work even though she's requested an extension for her childcare to be taken into account, flexibility. Indirect religious discrimination could be where maybe a Jewish person decides to apply for a role and the company indirectly discriminates that person because under their practice they have to exercise their rights on a Saturday. So, you know, it takes into account indirect discrimination. So, you know, it's really important that we look at elements of direct and indirect discrimination because they happen within the workplace all the time. So let's go on to what discrimination is now and why it's so important with it in regards to elements of treating everyone equally. So discrimination is unfair or prejudicial treatment of people and groups based on characteristics, as we mentioned, the protected characteristics. Discrimination is an action that is often based on a person's negative attitude. So it could be that we're labeling people, or we're stereotyping people, or we're prejudiced against people. So discrimination is an element that involves treating people differently. So having these negative attitudes towards them and treating them different is an element of discrimination. And, you know, it is the unlawful treatment of an individual and treating them more differently. And we are either labeling them, stereotyping them, or being prejudiced against them. So we're going to go through these elements so you have an understanding of each one. So the first one is labeling. Labeling is is to give a group of people a name because of their characteristics. So it could be, for example, it could be, someone who's from goth, like dresses all in black and is a goth and wears black lipstick, black nail polish. That person is an example, and someone who has their own identity as a goth. Goth is us lot labeling that person, and that's form of negative discrimination. Then we have stereotyping, which is to have an opinion about a group and applying this to belonging to that group. For example, no woman can park a car. That's an example of where they're stereotyping and thinking that's how it is, how they're being prejudiced against that. And then we've got prejudice, which could mean not to like someone just because of the group they belong to, or without being biased or the fact. So it's really important element of discrimination that we don't do this. And discrimination involves treating people differently because of assumptions made about a person or a group of people based on their differences. Negative attitudes and behavior exist in society that can lead individuals or groups to being oppressed and disadvantaged. So we need to make sure this doesn't happen within the workplace because it has a huge impact on elements of it. So let's go through each one. So we're looking at 1.1, okay, and that's defining and analysing examples of prejudice, stereotyping, and oppression. So the first one is looking at what is prejudice. And discrimination is making a distinction against a person or thing based on the group, class, or category they belong to, rather than basing any action on individual merit. A simple distinction between prejudice discrimination is that prejudice is to do with attitude, discrimination is to do with actions. So prejudice is an opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. So prejudice from people from different backgrounds, that's a good prejudice. You can look at elements of everyone's different backgrounds and mean prejudice against that. Also, another prejudiced example is prejudice discrimination is if you hold an opinion that women do not like to travel in their jobs. And for this reason, you do not select a woman for the job requiring traveling. You have committed a discriminatory act based on your prejudice, and this is unlawful. So, you need to make sure you are looking at elements of that, where you don't treat anyone unfairly based on unfairly towards a group or a group of people. A woman, like we mentioned, that they're not rejected. The main causes of prejudice is the psychological basis for prejudice is people's key values, the values they see themselves and others, their sense of social identity, and their social norms plays a big part in this. Who can be included and who can be excluded. So it's quite sad to see that we base our elements of prejudice on elements of social identity. It's a prejudgmental based on inadequate knowledge, and it's complex problem, that sometimes can lead in different countries to elements of war and abuse and murder. So prejudice is an element that can be, it's treating people differently based on a group. Next one to look at is stereotyping. So when we look at stereotyping, that's an element of someone that would making a judgment about an individual that's influenced by a mental state, associating members of a group to which the individual is perceived to belonging. So stereotypes are characteristics that society instinctively attributes to groups of people and classify them according. It might be, and the example we've given is old people elderly people are bad tippers, you know, Asian people are good at maths, women like to talk a lot, gay men are flamboyant, and that's what we stereotype people as. It might be according to their age, it might be according to their occupation, it might be according to their skin types, it might be according to their gender. You know, sexual stereotyping is another one where it involves associating girls and boys with separate at times, you know, so making sure that, you know, you look at the element of stereotyping. It's really important to take into account that it's a form of discrimination. You know, we can't say that women are better than men, or, you know, it's an assumption we've got, or elderly people are bad tippers. You know, that's the element that they've based around that. It's not something that we would be saying, because it's a form of discrimination that would happen within the workplace or outside the workplace. Everyone has different beliefs. A stereotype means assuming that a group, like we said, has a different characteristics. So it could, stereotypes are all often negatively impactful, overly simplistic, dangerous in some circumstances, and also unfair. You know, so you've got to make sure that you are not stereotyping people, and it's a form of discrimination. Then we've got elements of stereotyping in regards to what it is an example of it, as I've mentioned. You know, it could be some people say foreigners, people with dark skin, women, retirees, or academics are, you know, forms of discrimination. Then we've got oppression. And oppression is the social act of placing severe restrictions or on an individual or group of people or an institution. So, you know, it's an element of imposing some sort of element of on someone. You know, it could be, you know, the fact that we're examples of oppression could be, you know, ageism, heterosexualism, sexism. You know, we are referring to elements of anti-Semitism. So, you know, these are where we're looking at oppression, and, you know, it's an element of viewed as, it could be viewed as organized mistreatment, you know, and it's where if people are suffering from oppression, you know, there is different examples of oppression, which, as I've mentioned, it's like an abuse of power by one group at the expense of others, and the use of force to maintain that dynamic. So, you know, trying to control something, and its examples are things like sexism, heterosexism, ableism, classism, ageism, and anti-Semitism. Is everyone okay with that so far? Everyone okay? So now we're going to go on to looking at elements of the principles of, let's just have a look in the chat. Okay, thank you, Sandra Esperance. So the principles of social psychological, including the ABCs, affect behavior and cognition, apply to the study of stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination. So social psychology is based on the ABCs of affect behavior and cognition, which we've got on there. In order to effectively maintain and enhance our own lives through successful interaction with others, we rely on these three basic principles and interrelated human capacities. So when we look at these, we look at the element of what each one means in regards to our behavior. So we've got affect, which is our feelings. Then we have behavior, which is discrimination, and then cognition, which is stereotyping. So our thoughts, what our thoughts are in regards to it. So elements of that, you know, we need to, affect refers to the feelings we experience as part of everyday life. you know, we experience things in the form of mood and emotions, and it refers to positive or negative feelings that we have, and they are in the background of our everyday life. So it could be our emotions. The behavior is what we actually do in regards to discrimination. You know, when we look at the behavior, the behavior on the cycle, you know, elements of that in regards to what our social psychological behavior affects what our behavior is, what we do to implement this behavior. You know, this cycle identifies the elements of that. So our behavior is, you know, what our feelings are, what we do, how we behave towards it, our interactions with it. You know, we look at elements of that, what we do, what our behavior is, and why we do these things as well. So, you know, you look at the elements of behavior and the elements of affect, prejudice, and in-group. And then we have cognitive, refers to how we stereotype, you know, why we stereotype like that, what are our behaviors, and you know, why we behave like that in regards to this ABC model of attitudes in social psychology. So there's an activity for you here to have a look at, and it looks at explaining using a clear account of your understanding details like why and how. So this table looks at elements of, sorry, I'll just go back to it. Diversity, so you'd put definition of term, example of diversity in regards to equality and inclusion and discrimination. So look at this in your own time, and we'll go through it next week. So it's explaining using a clear account of your understanding, what you think it means, including details why and how. So what you think equality means, what you think inclusion means, what you think discrimination means, and why and how. So give examples of diversity, give examples of equality, give examples of discrimination. So this, please fill this in as you go along, so you've got a little bit of an idea of what the elements are. When we look at equality, diversity, and inclusion, everyone should have an equal opportunity to access high quality care within the health and social sector and support to meet their individual needs, and people should not be disadvantaged due to their background, their culture, or community. And there are people out there that are disadvantaged because of this, you know, and people need to make sure that they are developing and implementing so that these elements into their working life, so there's no forms of discrimination. So example, a community group organizes activities in a village hall that does not have access that is suitable for individuals who are wheelchair users. To describe means to create a picture with words, but not simply writing a list of bullet points. So if you're working within an organization and there's no elements of signs or anything for anyone who's a wheelchair user or anything like that, or anywhere where it says, for example, to prevent people from touching some form of hazardous material, they need to have a warning sign out there for people so that they have access. So this is a form of discrimination because they've got no access. For wheelchair users, you know, they need to make sure that they have access for wheelchair users, so they're able to, able to use the community group. You know, they organize an activity, does not have access to, access that is suitable for individuals who are wheelchair users. You know, it's really important that they have this sign up where the wheelchair user can go, how they can use the entrance, if there's any sort of entrance for them as well, and these are, if there's nothing like this, then it's a form of discrimination. So it needs to be taken into account both within your profession and also within, you know, healthcare profession, that we take people's elements of their needs into account, especially if it's discrimination or it's a disability or even elderly. So any of the protected characteristics are not abused. So just to conclude, everyone, like I said, should have equal opportunities and access to any sort of high quality care and support within the healthcare profession. The workers that work within the healthcare profession need to be sensitive to people's needs and have confidence to discuss individuals' differences and to find out how they can best offer any sort of care and support to that individual, taking into account, you know, the protected characteristics, their age, their gender. So, you know, it's really important that working within that environment, you are creating an inclusive organization. So you are making sure you are you are not discriminating against people from ethnic minority backgrounds, because they often face barriers, you know, it could be any sort of language barriers, or, you know, it could be the fact that they don't feel valued. You should make sure that you are taking into account, you know, the you know, being creative, creating an inclusive environment, making sure that, you know, that people are treated equally and no one is, you know, treated unfairly, you know, and, you know, within the health and social care sector, it's really important that we are treated people fairly, regardless of their age, as we mentioned, their gender, their ethnicity, disability, religious beliefs, you know, that it means ensuring that everyone has access to the same high quality care, as I mentioned earlier. And we need to make sure we are making sure that diversity within the health and social care is implemented, and understanding people's backgrounds and experiences. And when it comes to the Equality Act, this 2010, we must show that we are implementing that legal framework to promote any sort of equality and prevent any sort of discrimination. And this legislation is really important within health and social care, because it needs to, where care professionals provide support in personal environment of a care recipient, making it crucial to respect and understand the diverse backgrounds and needs of those that they serve. So it could be different people, you know. There has been lots of cases in history that, you know, people have not treated individuals with care and respect, and that's why the Equality Act 2010 needs to be implemented to prevent any sort of discrimination against, like, ethnicity, gender, you know, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, and, you know, policies and practices that need to be implemented within the health and social care profession to ensure that care is not only equitable, but acknowledges and respects the diverse backgrounds of both care recipients and professionals, you know, so they make sure they promote EDI principles, which are, you know, equality, diversity and inclusion principles within their sector, to make sure that they implement them. And also, you know, it could be a challenge, you know, within health and social care, but when you promote best practices and provide training for your employers and provide any sort of community engagement, diverse workforce, promoting equality and diversity is essential for providing high quality personalised care that meets the needs of every individual. By embracing principles, care providers can ensure they're not only complying with legal standards, because, you know, you have legal regulations, which is the Equality Act 2010, but also delivering care that truly makes a difference to everyone's lives they serve. And, you know, make sure that you are, you know, taking into account all the policies and procedures. So these are some of the references for Learning Outcome 1, which you can use the links for if you need to have a read around the areas around them, and look at articles on skills, or if there's an article here on stereotypes, prejudice, discrimination. Refer to ebooks and journals and on Moodle for this unit, and this recording will also be available on Moodle for you, so it could help you and support you when it comes to doing your assignment. If you have any questions or any queries, you could email learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk. And then submission of the assignment is to be done on learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk, but that is 2 weeks after the completion of the unit. So we've only done learning outcome 1 today. Tomorrow is learning outcome 3, learning outcome 2, and then we've got learning outcome 3, and then the assignment discussion. If you have any questions, please email learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk. Ebooks and additional reading and journals and any sort of resources, PowerPoint slides, the link to this recording will all be on Moodle for you. So please go on Moodle for any sort of resources. Has anyone got any questions? We've now finished learning outcome 1. Has anyone got any questions? Just want to put it in the chat box if you've got no questions or anything. Okay, so if anyone hasn't got any questions, let me just, there's something in the chat box. No, thank you. Thank you, Esperance. Olu and Sandra, if you have no questions, we've now finished the session, and thank you for attending today's session, and I will see you tomorrow all in the Learning Outcome 2, which is tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Thank you for attending today's session. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.